everyone. Welcome to A Life in Movies, the interview show from All the Right Movies. My name is Luke.
I'm John.
And on the show, we talk to people in entertainment about 3 of their favourite films. Today, we're talking to comedian, writer, DJ, TV presenter, and all-round movie aficionado, Alex Zane. Great to have you on the show, Alex. How are you doing?
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. Lovely to be here talking movies with you two. So, yeah, very well, thanks.
Good. Where you at, Alex? Where you based?
I'm in North London currently, and I just took the dog out for a big 2-hour walk. So we should be undisturbed because I'm recording from home, and he's currently passed out on the couch. He has this really weird habit of waiting until I'm doing an interview in my broom cupboard upstairs, a lot like the old children's BBC broom cupboard. He, like Gordon the Gopher, he pops up and just goes, "Now I'd like some attention, please." So I think we're going to be all right.
Well, you were right, but you have the same references by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
we were just saying, it's always nice to talk to people you say the same age so you can go, "You remember the broom cupboard?" Yeah.
That's our listenership completely turned off then.
Doing a bit of research into you for this, Alex, actually, I was surprised to see, because I didn't know that you are originally from Leeds.
I am originally from Leeds. Why, are you either of you two Leeds boys? You're not, are you?
No, but I used to live there for quite a few years. So I was wondering where you're from originally.
Let's do this. Were you a student there? So were you like
No,
Hyde Park?
Not far from Hyde Park, but I worked there. I worked in Headingley, and I lived in Chapel Allerton.
Oh, I know Chapel Allerton. So I'm just down the road from Chapel Allerton. This is going to get very niche very quickly. So do you know Oakwood Clock, where they've got the retro fish bar, best fish and chips in the country? Yeah, so I literally live just behind that. Well, I grew up just behind there. My mum's still up there. But yeah, Leeds is a great city.
It is a great city, beautiful city.
Very nice, pleasant reminiscences. I wish I was a part of them.
Yeah, a great fish and chip recommendation. If anyone is ever in the Oakwood area, stop into Oakwood Fish Bar. It is. I'm not kidding. I've had fish and chips on the coast that don't taste as good as inner city Leeds fish and chips.
A surprising shout out for Oakwood Fish Bar that I wasn't expecting.
I told you it was going to get niche very quickly. Even I didn't anticipate just how niche it was going to get. A local fish and chip shop in Oakwood, Leeds.
And you're the first guest on A Life in Movies from the UK, Alex, so that's quite a milestone for us. Thank you.
I'm honoured. Thank you.
So, come to you live from North London. We're going to talk about 3 movies that Alex has chosen. Are these your top 3 favourite films of all time, Alex?
One of them is my favourite film of all time. The other 2 are movies that I very much like, one of which I think is criminally underrated, so I'm looking forward to talking about that. But yeah, I think the first movie we're going to talk about is, in my opinion, the greatest film ever made.
Wow. Brilliant. Okay, very nice. So go for it, Alex. What is your first choice?
My first choice, gentlemen. Oh, it's a bit like Blind Date, isn't it? There's another reference. There's another reference for just us. I'd like to pick for my first movie, Jaws.
Oh, yes. What a way to start. From 1975, written by Carl Gottlieb and Peter Benchley, and based on Benchley's novel, Jaws was masterfully directed by Steven Spielberg. Roy Scheider stars as Martin Brody, the police chief of Amity, who is convinced that the island is under threat from a great white shark. Setting off on the ocean waves with salty sea dog Quint and oceanographer Hooper, the mismatched trio face an epic struggle to bring peace back to their shores. Whew. We've got the head, the tail, the whole damn thing here, Alex. Why have you chosen Jaws?
This was no boating accident.
Do you remember the first time you saw the film, Alex?
I absolutely do, yeah. So Jaws has had the biggest impact of all movies I've ever watched in my life. It's dictated my existence on this planet. I watched it when I was 5 years old, and I remember distinctly, it was on ITV, and I remember saying to my mum, I want to watch Jaws. I was fascinated by sharks already, and I was like, I want to watch Jaws. And my mum said no, and I was like, oh, please. And then in the end, she said, okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now, I'd argue, as I have done with my mum, at 5 years old, I don't really understand the concept of jeopardy, and she should have just stopped me watching it. Because having watched it at 5, I have never been in the sea since.
Wow, is that true?
That's absolutely true. I mean, just a complete transparency. I've got my ankles wet. I've paddled about in the surf, but I will not go any further than maybe knee height. And even then, if I'm going knee height, I do the thing that a lot of the generation that saw Jaws too young do, where you position other bathers between you and the open sea. So you're certain that if a shark comes in, it's going to go for them first. So I don't go in the sea. I climbed out of the swimming pool during my 25-meter swimming certificate because I thought there was a shark in there. And for 15 years or so after watching Jaws, I couldn't have bubbles in the bath because I needed to be able to see the bottom in case a trapdoor opened and a shark swam up and death.
Wow. Traumatized.
It had a huge effect on me, but I absolutely love it. I don't love its legacy because I'm a huge shark fan. I sponsor a shark that is somewhere, I believe, out in the ocean called Cut Tail, I believe he's called. Although I looked at the documents the other day and they were like, "Yeah, we haven't seen him for 15 years." I'm like, he might well be dead, and I'm still giving.
That's a long time.
Still paying.
Yeah, it's not like a couple of days. 15 years is a long time.
They haven't stopped the standing order, though, have they?
Exactly.
That's still going out.
Exactly. I don't know whether it's transferred to another shark or what's going on, but yeah, I don't like the legacy. I don't like the fact that it's demonized sharks. I know the author Peter Benchley often talks about his biggest regret about the book is obviously not the millions he made from it. It's the fact that he turned sharks into this villain of the sea. But I think it's a perfect film.
Yeah, I love it as well. I mean, speaking of the book, Alex, I can see you've got it there on your shelf.
Oh yes, I do. Well, this is Carl Gottlieb's. Have you ever read this? This is the Jaws.
I've not read it. It looks brilliant. Yeah.
Oh my God, because it's one of those movies with so much rumor and history and all sorts of bits and pieces. That's kind of the definitive guide to everything that happened on set. So if you're a Jaws fan, I'd recommend the Jaws log. But yeah, it's great. There's a wonderful story in there about Richard Zanuck and David Brown, the producers.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea, this is how little people knew about sharks in the 70s. Because obviously now we know a lot about them. But at this point, Zanuck and Brown, when they decided, they bought the rights to Jaws and they were like, we're going to make Jaws, they started approaching people with the request that they needed a trained great white shark that was comfortable enough to interact with divers in the water. And it was Peter Benchley went, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as a trained shark. But that was their first port of call, was to try and find a trained shark.
There's another great story about how Steven Spielberg wasn't the first director. It was a fella called Dick Richards. Don't know if you've heard that. And he got fired because in meetings with Zanuck and Brown, he kept calling the shark a whale instead of a shark. So they had to let him go.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many crazy stories because obviously there's that famous scene in it where the shark attacks the cage and destroys the cage, and obviously that's a real shark. And Ron and Valerie Taylor were these shark experts, and
that's right. Yeah,
they had a very small guy, Carl Rizzo, I think his name was. I think he was a former jockey, but he was a small guy. To get this perspective of the shark, they wanted a small diver to go in the cage, and because he wanted to work in movies, when they said, "Have you done any diving?" he was like, "Absolutely." He'd never been diving in his life, and so when it came to getting in this cage, he was really reluctant, and he held off. He was like, actually, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I don't want to do this. And then in the end, just as he was about to get in the cage, that shark got trapped in the rope of the cage and absolutely decimates it, which is what you see on screen. And Ron and Valerie Taylor say that if he'd been in the cage, he would most certainly have been dead. So his absolute reluctance and fear saved his life, which is why I don't go in the sea. Like, I've got this tattoo of a shark on my wrist
cool.
to remind me that if I ever get drunk on a beach and someone goes, "Hey, let's go in the sea," I just have to look down and remember that's where the sharks live.
Yeah, Carl Rizzo, I think he was only about 4'10" maybe or something, because they wanted to make the shark look huge, so they got a smaller person in there. Yeah, pretty clever.
Yeah. Have you read the actual book? I held off for years, and then
the novel. I've read the novel. Yeah, I do like it. It has a bit of a bad rap, I think, but I do like it, but not as much as the film.
No, I think it's certainly a case of a film that's better than the novel. I mean, my biggest problem with the novel is what a dick Hooper is in the novel.
Terrible. He's a terrible character, yeah.
Doesn't he sleep with Brody's wife?
Yep.
Yeah.
He sleeps with his Brody's wife, has an affair with her. And so when you actually get to the bit, because Hooper dies in the book, and the shark kind of holds his body up, like taunts Brody and Quint with this body, like it lifts the body out of the water and sort of shows it off. And I'm like, good. I don't like Hooper in the book.
Yeah, I don't like him in the book either. I think he's like a long-haired kind of beach bum kind of a scientist guy.
Yeah, yeah. He's certainly not the lovable, the lovable Richard Dreyfuss. No, great.
No,
I actually went to see that play, The Shark is Broken.
Oh, right,
yeah.
Got good reviews.
It's amazing. It's absolutely brilliant. And Ian Shaw, who is Robert Shaw's son, who wrote the play and obviously plays Quint in it. It's uncanny when he's in Quint's outfit and he's delivering the Indianapolis speech. You're sort of almost like, I'm watching it live. Like it's you can't separate him from Robert Shaw. He looks so much like him.
So that's about the making of Jaws. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about sort of the relationship, because famously, obviously, Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss did not get on.
Hated each other.
Yeah, because Robert Shaw liked to drink, and I think, there's the whole story about how his first try at the Indianapolis speech, he was too drunk, and he was like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do it tomorrow. And when he did it the following day, he was absolutely amazing. But I think his feud with Dreyfuss really started because he was climbing onto the Orca and he handed Richard Dreyfuss his glass of whiskey while he found his footing on the boat. And Richard Dreyfuss chucked it in the sea. And I think after that, there was no way back.
Well, talking about the lead characters, it's got 3 incredibly strong lead performances. Alex, which is your favourite character? Who's your favourite character?
Great question. I think it's Hooper. I just think he's great. Yes. I think like that scene where he goes around to the Brodies and they've finished dinner and he's just like, is anyone eating this? And starts eating the dinner.
Yeah,
I love
it.
Just little bits like that. Obviously, he only really works as a pairing with Quint. You got city hands, Mr. Hooper. Been counting money all your life.
Yeah.
But those two, I think, are absolutely fantastic. The character who doesn't get mentioned enough, and I think has possibly the most tragic story in the film, is poor Pippin the dog. I just as a dog owner, do either of you have dogs?
I don't know.
No. Okay. So it might not resonate with you, but that moment where the shark, it's around the Kittner boy's death. So it's when Alex Kittner's been killed, but also no one's thinking about poor Pippin and that owner just wandering up and down the surf line, just sort of going, Pippin,
heartbreaker.
Absolutely destroys me.
Yeah, you see the stick floating on the water, don't you?
Yes, yeah. So apparently there's that still that floats around the internet quite often of what the original death of the Kittner boy was going to be like. Because I think was it Joe Alves who shot it after Spielberg had left already, so they did some stuff and it was just so graphic. He was like, nope, can't put that in. And when you see the still, it's monstrous. It's a petrifying black and white photo.
Yeah, you see the boy actually in the shark's mouth, don't you? Yes. I didn't know it was shot by Joe Alves, though. He designed the shark. I was involved in designing the shark, I think.
Yeah, he's production designer, isn't he?
Yeah.
Didn't he direct your favourite as well, John, Jaws 3D?
He did do that one, yeah.
Jaws 3D, I think, is underrated. I have a lot of love for Jaws 3D, and I think it's. This is probably going to get a few people irate. I think it's almost. I'm not gonna go the whole hog and bury myself this early in our chat, but I think it's almost as good as Jaws 2.
I thought you were going to say the first one.
Yes, that's right. I've come on to talk about my favourite movie, Jaws, and my second favourite movie, Jaws 3D.
So what do you think of Jaws the Revenge then, Alex?
I've tried, man. I've tried on numerous occasions. The most fun thing about Jaws the Revenge are those 2 weird alternate endings where in one, Jake, Mike's mate, is alive and like sort of wheels up to the helicopter or the plane at the end in a wheelchair, but he's very much alive. And I was watching and I didn't know there was this alternate ending, and I was watching it again and suddenly he just doesn't appear. I'm like, what the hell? Where's Jake? And they just decided in one, he's dead. Mario Van Peebles' character is dead.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's sort of like, what? Of all the problems with Jaws the Revenge, it's not whether Mario Van Peebles lives or dies. But I will say this. I do think the opening of Jaws the Revenge is brilliant. It's one of those things. So, for example, like Alien 3, like a sequel that is not only bad, but because of what it contains, it ruins your enjoyment of the original. So for Aliens is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's better than Alien.
Yeah.
But Alien 3, by killing Newt and Hicks at the start,
it's a crime.
It destroys the end of Aliens because it's a feel-good ending. It's like Newt's alive, Hicks has survived, and then Alien 3, bang, both dead. So I think Jaws the Revenge, I think it's the best bit in the film, Sean's death. But you're like watching Jaws now and you're going, that little kid is going to be killed. Like he's going to get his arm torn off and then murdered by a shark 20 years from now.
Yeah, you're right. That scene is actually really good, but it ruins the first film. I think one of my favorite things about Jaws, when I read certainly the behind the scenes stories, Alex, is that Steven Spielberg was only, 26, 27 when he directed it. Loads and loads and loads of production issues with the film, and somehow he managed to turn it around. Is it? I'm guessing it must be your favorite Spielberg film then?
It is my favorite Spielberg film. I think he's actually gone on record and said, if the shark worked, I'd have probably made half the movie I ended up making, because it is that happy accident. The shark didn't work. And so we got those barrels, those terrifying barrels.
Yeah, they're incredible.
How scary. 3, you can't stay under with 3. Not with 3. But yeah, although we have to give credit where credit's due. I think it was, maybe it was Richard Zanuck, but Spielberg had a crazy idea for how he wanted to end Jaws. He wanted, as Brody and Hooper are paddling back to shore, he wanted a school of shark fins to appear on the horizon heading towards them.
Really?
And Richard Zanuck was the one who went, absolutely not. Not a chance. So yeah, Spielberg, if he'd had his way, would have undone one of the feel-good endings in cinema.
Yeah. Well, the end's great. I think Spielberg and Peter Benchley fell out on the set as well over the ending, because he changed the ending to how the shark blows up, which doesn't happen in the novel, and Benchley wasn't happy about it. So they kind of fell out as well.
Doesn't the shark just get tired and then die?
Yeah, I think it's kind of just sinks, I think, yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, it's quite a low key ending in the book. It does just sink. I think you're right. I think the barrels tire it out, and it just sinks. Because I think Benchley was like, "This is nonsense. This doesn't work. A shark would not explode if you fired a rifle at an oxygen tank in its mouth." And Spielberg's answer was, "At this point in the movie, I'll have the audience that I could pretty much do anything and they'd still come with me," which I think is true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Knows what he's doing, that Spielberg, doesn't he?
Yeah, he knows a thing or two.
He's got a career ahead of him. He certainly.
What do you think of the actual shark itself, Alex? Because it's quite a popular thing now to bash how the shark looks.
It's a really good question, and I think again, because by the time it makes its appearance, so I think we first really get a proper look at it when Brody's. Why don't you come down here and chum some of this shit? I think at that point, because it's been this thing, this like we've seen the POV shots when it's killing the Kittner boy, which is. This again, just to go back to why I don't go in the sea. If I was on a lilo, all I would be thinking is that's what I visualize, like the POV shot of a shark swimming up beneath me. And then you watch any video of a great white breaching, like snatching a seal, and you're just like, yeah, I mean, that's oh my god, honestly, it's doing a number on me. By the time we see it, the groundwork has been done in this movie, and it's terrifying. There was going to be another scene that I think they couldn't film because it was too complicated, too expensive, or maybe the shot wasn't working, because when it's the two fishermen who are using the Sunday roast to catch up to the pier.
Yes.
There was meant to be a row of boats moored out at sea, and they were going to go up one at a time as the shark swam under it to give you an idea of the scale of the fish, just how big it was.
Yeah. That moment where the jetty sort of turns in the water to signify, fantastic, that.
Isn't it?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. It's like, by the time the shark appears, I've been terrified by a floating piece of wood. So at that point, I'm sold.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the scenes in the film then, Alex, which one would you say, if you had to pick one, is your favourite scene in Jaws?
I've got a really weird one for Jaws, and I don't know why it's my favorite scene, but I think it's because of the emotional journey we've just been on. So it's where the two kids are doing the shark fin fake out. So it's the kids, you think the shark's there, and it's the kids, and they've got a cardboard fin. And then Michael is in the pond, and there's that girl who sees the shark swimming into the pond. And it's a combination of the fact that she can't get the words out, which is like, shark. It's that. And Brody's really dismissive on it, like, what now? And then Ellen Brody goes, Michael's in the pond. And you see Brody start running and getting faster. And it's that little sequence. But really, it's the actress going, shark. It just gets me every time. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
Shark! The shark!
Now what?
Michael's in the pond.
So you've been in entertainment for over 20 years, Alex. How did you get started?
I started doing stand-up comedy in Leeds. Actually, you probably remember the pub that I did my first ever gig in. Back to Leeds, chat. The Dry Dock pub.
The old boat.
The old boat, yeah.
Wow.
So I did my first ever stand-up gig there. Wow. Yeah, died on my ass. Terrible. And then, but I kept on going. And I was actually in Edinburgh. I was doing the Edinburgh Festival in 2002. And again, I think there's always a little bit of serendipity in how careers start, a little bit of luck. And I was on stage, and MTV were in the room, and they were scouting for some new presenters. And they said, you should come down to London and screen test. So I did. And then I got my first job hosting a movie show because they wanted me to do a comedy show. And I was like, there was a movie show up for grabs called Screenplay. And I was like, I'd like to do that, please. And so I fought for it, and I got to do it. And it was one of the most fun jobs I ever had, just being able to, because even now, I don't think there are many critical review shows on TV. There was Film 2000 and whatever. Back in the day, obviously the great.
There was very few movie shows when we were younger.
Yeah, especially like there were a lot of movie promotional shows, like paid for by the studios, that were like, look how cool this movie is, look how amazing it's going to be. But I had the privilege to be able to go on TV and critique movies, like give a review to camera, which was lovely.
So what was the format of that show, Alex? It was just a review show reviewing new releases?
Yeah, review show, the new releases that week. And also we did some set visits here and there, one of which I'll be mentioning in a little moment.
Very nice.
And then the first time I became aware of you, actually, Alex, was when you were on T4. What was it, Pop World you used to host?
Yeah,
that was a week morning show, I think, from what I remember. Because I used to live in London at the time when you were on it. You hosted it with Alexa Chung. I used to love it.
Yeah, no, that was great fun. Yeah, so I jumped ship from MTV after about 4 years at MTV, and then ended up doing I first started doing Balls of Steel on Channel 4, which was a prank show that we did, and then I did Pop World after that, and then moved on to Rude Tube.
Oh, yeah. And I also know that you were on XFM for a while. Me and Luke are both massive fans of the Ricky Gervais, Stephen Merchant podcast, and Carl Pilkington. Was wondering if you might have a story or two about them. I'm assuming you knew them at the time.
Well, they do reference you in one of the shows from the XFM days.
They do.
Yeah, I've heard about this. So I actually did. They were on at 1:00 on a Saturday, and I was on at 10:00. So I did what I lovingly referred to as the Ricky Gervais warm-up show. So I did the
Right.
show before them, then they took over. It was actually Ricky who got me my job at XFM. He,
amazing.
it was a really nice thing for him to do. He said they were looking for new DJs, and he put me forward, and so I went in, and it wasn't just like, oh well, Ricky says so, here's your job. I had to do the demo tape and everything, but yeah, that was great fun. So the story is Carl. They asked Carl who the most attractive man is, and he says me. I'm like, that's
You said
so
you
lovely.
lucky thing.
Yeah, I think he says young Alex Zane.
yeah. And the emphasis right now is on the young version of this.
Amazing. Okay, Alex, so what is the second film on your list?
The second film on my list is Event Horizon.
Ooh, yes. Released in 1997, Event Horizon was written by Philip Eisner and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. In deep space, the crew of the Lewis and Clark rescue ship, with the aid of Dr. Weir, go in search of the Event Horizon, a ship thought to have disappeared 7 years ago. When they reach their destination, untold terrors are unleashed amid hallucinations and unknowable forces. It has a talented cast including Larry Fishburne, Sam Neill, Jolie Richardson, and Kathleen Quinlan. The gate is open, Alex. Why have you chosen Event Horizon?
So I mentioned at the start that one of the movies I think is criminally underrated, and this is that film. I love this movie. I loved it from the first moment I saw it. I watched it at the cinema. I actually watched it at the cinema. I was in Bangkok in 1997, doing a little bit of traveling. And as you do in this vibrant, culture-filled city, where you can go and visit any number of iconic, historic landmarks, I went and watched Event Horizon in the cinema, and I loved it.
Tell you what, though, Alex, I think Alien has ripped this right off, hasn't it?
I mean, look, it gets a few accusations leveled at it, like, oh, it's a bit of an Alien ripoff. I mean, so for me, I'll just ask you. Why don't I just ask you? Are either of you 40k players or collectors? Warhammer 40k.
I saw the book on your shelf there behind you. I used to be when I was younger, yeah.
Right, yeah. I'm building.
I was never that cool.
I'm building an orc army at the moment, so that's why that's. So yeah, at school, just to set the scene, I was the only kid out of 2,000 pupils at my comprehensive school. I was the only one who carried a briefcase. So
Briefcase.
in that briefcase, I kept a copy of the Warhammer 40k rule book, which I just get out sometimes, and I also kept the rules to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which is, for those who don't know, it's a lot like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's better. So we used to play that at lunchtimes. So yeah, Philip Eisner, he was big into 40k, and I love the idea, which I don't think has ever been confirmed, but a lot of 40k fans truly believe it, that this movie is basically mankind's first encounter with the warp space, which is obviously a huge part of the 40k universe. So they've kind of adopted this movie as part of the 40k canon.
Right, yeah.
Speaking of your bookshelf there, Alex, I notice you've also got Above Top Secret by Timothy Good, one of my favourites. I think you've stolen my bookshelf.
I mean, this bookshelf, really, I should check it. I don't even know what's on here. If you hadn't pointed this out, I'd be like, what? Yes. So what have we got? This is pretty much my life. I've got the Jaws log, a book about the worldwide UFO cover-up, and an Orc Army Codex for Warhammer 40k.
Best bookshelf ever.
All essential reading.
Yeah. But if we can go back to Event Horizon just briefly, I think famously, Alex, there was some deleted footage taken out from the film. Have you seen any of that?
So isn't this part of the reason this movie? I mean, I'm assuming you guys like it. Do you like it, or do you think it's a little bit naff?
I like it. Yeah, I like it.
I really, sci-fi is not my thing really, but I think there's something tantalizing, and I think it's particularly because of those CCTV images, the footage. It kind of shows you what happens, but doesn't, and you just want to see more. But obviously, it looks absolutely outrageous as well. You don't want to see more.
Yeah, so you're talking about the famous blood orgy scene where yeah. So I mean, this movie, I love the mythology that's built up around this movie about this famous longer cut of the movie, which was so graphic that people were passing out in the cinemas. Paramount got cold feet and cut it down to, like, I think it's a pretty sharpish hour 30, hour 40. But there was
Pretty
initially, the first time it was screened, this 2 hour, 10-minute cut, and you saw so much more. You saw images in that hell orgy that were just like really, like people having screws screwed into their eyes, someone's legs being bashed off so much that they just come off his body, and then the rest of the torso crawls across the floor. And famously, all that footage was stored in a Transylvanian salt mine, and just it got
unbelievable.
It got degraded to the point that it's lost now. It's lost.
Yeah.
And then this rumor started that there was a VHS copy that the producer Lloyd Levin had, but then since then he said, no, that's degraded as well. So it's this idea that we all sort of go, I really, really wish we'd seen the longer cut. And I don't know. I think the joy is that we can't. And I think the excitement and the fascination is because we can't. I don't think if we saw it, it would be as good as the idea of imagining what it could have been like.
Yeah, I feel the same about Stallone's Cobra. Apparently, there's a 30 minutes extra that should have been in the film that was cut out, which would explain a lot about the film. So I'm holding out for that one, to be honest.
That's amazing. Cobra, is that the one where Stallone is such a tough, busy cop? He eats a frozen pizza, without even bothering to cook it because he's so committed to being a cop.
Doesn't he cut it with a pair of scissors or something? Yeah.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Stallone.
But yeah, I mean, I think with Event Horizon, I think the one scene that I think Paul W.S. Anderson has said he'd like to have put back in that was cut out of the version that we eventually saw is Sam Neill in devil form does a spider walk backwards down a ladder.
All right.
For anyone who's obviously seen the famous spider walk that Reagan does in The Exorcist that William Friedkin famously cut out of that, I still think I've watched it on YouTube just the other day. I still think it's the scariest thing that is not in the theatrical version of The Exorcist. It's absolutely terrifying.
I love it, yeah.
So in my head, the Sam Neill spider walk is probably comparable to that. So I've built it up. And if I saw it, I'd be like, nah, that's all right. But the fact that I can't is it tickles me.
Great cast though, isn't there? I mean, Sam Neill, everyone likes Sam Neill, surely, but Jolie Richardson, Lawrence Fishburne, really good.
Oh, what a cast. And the fact that basically they picked Sam Neill, they decided we want Sam Neill because he was like America's sweetheart. He just saved those kids in Jurassic Park. He saved the kids from the dinosaurs, and they're like, we're going to turn him into the devil. And I love that. I love that casting decision.
Oh, he's amazing. What a turn right at the end, because you know he's not on the level, but you wouldn't expect him to go this far.
Yeah, I mean, it really works for me as a movie. From that opening shot of the Event Horizon in that decaying orbit, just sitting there in space, and it's such a beautiful ship. I think it was based on the Notre Dame Cathedral, is what they tried to create with the design of it. But the way it's just sitting there, this sentient ship waiting for people, it scares the life out of me. And I mean, I think some of the things that they did on set were probably more horrific than the movie. So, you know, the kid who's got the injuries on his legs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a version of that where they had maggots crawling in all his wounds, but they wanted a reaction shot from the kid. So they put a screen in front of him so he couldn't see his legs, filled these prosthetic legs with maggots, and then to get the shot, they started rolling and then just pulled the screen back to get the kid, so the kid looked at what he thought were his legs full of maggots. And apparently his reaction was, it was just way too much to actually go in the film because he just lost his mind, as you would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Alien before there, Alex. I think the world feels very much like it's taken from that kind of Ridley Scott Alien kind of a thing. And I felt the narrative has influences in The Shining, maybe. Do you take that from it?
It's like a haunted house in space. Yeah. I mean, it was initially going to be a lot more like Alien because Philip Eisner's original script had tentacled aliens running amok on the ship. And then
Well, there you go.
Paul W.S. Anderson was like, no, we can't do that. And I think it was Andrew Kevin Walker. So he'd just done 7.
All right.
And so, according to Lloyd Levin, the producer, he was like, Andrew Kevin Walker was in exactly the right place to do a pass on our script. And it was him who came up with the idea of the ship having passed through to hell.
Right. Well, I think that's infinitely better than just straight up ripping off Alien.
Every time I bump into Sean Pertwee, I chew his ear off about this film to the point where I think I've started to annoy him. But he always tells me, like, he always has one bit of nugget of information that he's not previously told me. The one last time where I trapped him because he couldn't get out because he was sitting in a corner seat and I just sat next to him and I was like, so, Event Horizon. He said that it was his idea because I think one of the great moments in it is the expression on Smitty's face when he opens the thing and discovers the bomb that Weir has planted.
Oh, yeah.
And at that moment, it was going to be 1-0. So he opened it and it just exploded. And he said to Paul Anderson, he was like, do it from like 4 or 5, because then you'll get my reaction shot. And that was his idea. And it's that face, that reaction shot, that like realization that makes that moment.
Yeah. Like, it's a great moment because it's like 5 seconds of knowing I'm dead. What can you possibly? Yeah. I like as well how the film occasionally, I think unintentionally, kind of lapses into comedy a little bit. Like the bit where Cooper is like space diving from one ship to the other, and he's like, "Whoa, I can't stop myself."
Oh man, I can't believe you've done. I mean, John. You've done it. What you've done there is pick up on what the one thing. If I could change anything about this movie, it's that ridiculous moment because he's like literally in outer space at one point, and then he goes, "What's going on?"
Wisecracking.
It's just, I hate that bit.
Yeah, that's such a strange turn in the dialogue and the tone as well, isn't it? Because it's been serious as hell, and then all of it, he's given quips outside. Weightlessness. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. All right, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about all the other.
Okay, draw a line under that one. And it's got similarities to Jaws, and it's a very tense horror movie experience, this film. And there's certainly a theme to the films that you've chosen to talk about, Alex. Is horror your favorite movie genre?
It is at this time of year. Halloween is the greatest night of the year, in my opinion, and so I spend October just immersed in horror. And we just happenstance has put me on your show at a moment where the only thing I'm thinking about is horror. And Event Horizon is one of. I mean, is it Alien? No. Is it good? Definitely. I mean, that moment with the cassette at the start, I remember seeing that for the first time where it's like, Liberate me.
Oh, yeah, that's good, yeah.
It's so good. And then DJ, Jason Isaacs' character, he's like, I made a mistake. It's not save us, it's Liberate tutame, save yourselves. Yeah. And there's more. Liberate tutame ex infernus, save yourselves from hell. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And you're telling us this now when we're here.
Yeah. And that airlock scene, oh my God, with Baby Bear and Mama Bear. It's just, that's
good dialogue. That I really like that.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is your favorite scene in the film, Alex?
That's why I stopped myself, because I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I didn't want to start repeating myself. But it is, I think, as an exercise in tension, as an exercise in horror, as an exercise in just really nasty, that airlock scene is brilliant because it's the moment where the alarm snaps Justin out of whatever trance he's been in, and at that point he's like, Mama Bear, open the door, and she can't, and you know that he's going to be thrown out into space, and he knows that, and no one can help him, and he's got to sit there as the timer ticks down. It's wonderful.
Hey. Stark, get it fucking open! Hey, open the door.
I can't! The inner door won't open when the outside door's been triggered. It would decompress the entire ship.
Oh my God. Mama Bear, open the door. Come on, please. Captain.
Patch me through to him.
Captain Miller, tell them to open the door.
They can't do that, Justin.
I don't want to die in here.
You're not gonna die. I want you to listen to me very carefully, and I'm gonna get you out of there.
Oh my God. It's starting.
Okay, so you talked about DJing, Alex, you TV presenter. How different was it working in the two mediums? What are the main differences, would you say?
Oh, that's a good question. I prefer radio because there's an authenticity to it. I mean, sorry, live TV, I loved. It's great. There's not that much live TV on, but I think when you're pre-recording shows, because I came from a live TV background, because I was doing TRL, Total Request Live on MTV, and I really loved that. And then I started doing pre-recorded TV, and it's quite rigid. There's a really set format, as you'd imagine with TV, whereas radio is just like there's an authenticity to it. It feels organic. It's live as well, which is always exciting. So yeah, I much preferred live TV and radio to regular pre-recorded TV, which again, I sort of like to do things spontaneously, for better and worse sometimes. And and when you're pre-recording, a producer will just go, "Yeah, you're absolutely not doing that. Do it again without that bit in." And I don't like that. I don't like being told what to do.
And you're the face of Sky Cinema, and you presented Sky's coverage of the Oscars. Where did your love of movies come from?
So, I mean, not to bring it back to the greatest movie ever made, but Jaws really was my way. It was the first time I sort of found the effect a movie could have on me. It was a combination of Jaws and spending my childhood wanting to be Burt Reynolds in Smokey and the Bandit. And genuinely, I kind of still do. That's my dream, is to really own a black 1977 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am and have a CB radio and be able to say things like breaker 19, this is the Bandit, and not sound like a total dickhead, which is very difficult.
I think, Alex, was there a time when you sported a mustache?
I've attempted to grow the
I'm sure I've seen you with one before, yeah.
I can't do it. I've tried, and if I could, I would, but I can't.
Speaking of Sky Cinema, obviously you interview a lot of people on the red carpet, etc., that kind of thing. Who is your favourite movie industry person that you've interviewed?
So I'm a big fan of Tom Cruise.
Oh, lovely.
Who isn't?
I've interviewed him so many times now. The weird story is when I was a student in London, the first premiere I ever went to, so I didn't know they had premieres in Leicester Square. I'd been in London about a year. And I sort of saw this crowd, and I kind of pushed my way to the front. I was like, what's going on here? Got to the railing, and as I got to the railing, it was just as Tom Cruise was walking past promoting Vanilla Sky, and he shook my hand, and I was like, wow. Oh my God. And then after that, so now cut to now, and obviously I was just hosting the Dead Reckoning Part 1 premiere in Leicester Square. And
wonderful.
It's great. I just find him such a fascinating person to talk to, because he's a massive movie geek, and also because, I mean, arguably he is the last true movie star that we still have working today, like an actual bona fide movie star. So that, and he sends me a cake every Christmas, so I kind of have to say it.
Does he? Wow, brilliant.
Does he really? So he is a real person then?
He is a real person. So
because he's ageless, isn't he?
Amazing.
He looks great. He still looks 25.
Yeah, he looks like he's 25. He does stunts like he's 25.
Yeah.
And so he's got this famous cake list. I only mention it because it makes me sound awesome, but also like a bit of an idiot for bringing it up. But yeah, he's got this cake list. So if you've worked with him, you get a cake every Christmas, and it's a delicious white chocolate and coconut cake.
I bet it is.
Oh, wonderful. Let's see if there's any room on that list. See if you can get all the right movies on it.
I'll bring it up next time I see him.
Put in a word.
Obviously, everyone knows Tom Cruise, the movie star, like you say, Alex. But what's he like face to face? What's he like as a person?
Great. He's great. I mean, again, so the show that I do with that I've done with him a couple of times, it's called Real Life, REEL Life, and we sit down in a cinema with an actor or a filmmaker, and we play on the big screen the most iconic scenes from their career,
Great.
and we talk about the memories that they had making it, and what it was like on the day, what it was like to shoot, all that kind of stuff, and I remember the first time we did it with Tom Cruise. It was we weren't sure if the format was going to work, and we sort of sat down and just to watch him mouthing along to his lines from Risky Business 30 years ago, and you're like, and it's just quite an emotional moment to see an actor still remember their lines and be mouthing along with them, and just sort of getting the reaction of them watching their body of work. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, what a way to take us into the third film. What is your third pick, Alex?
Thank you. My third pick is going to be 2004's Dawn of the Dead.
Oh,
yes, indeed. Yeah, written by James Gunn and directed by Zack Snyder, a remake of George A. Romero's 70s classic. A group of mismatched strangers hole up in a local shopping mall for sanctuary amid a horde of rage and zombies baying for blood outside. Sarah Polley and Ving Rhames are the big players in a great ensemble cast. Hell is overflowing and Satan is sending his dead back to us, Alex. Why have you chosen Dawn of the Dead?
I think I've timed this quite badly, haven't I? Because I've just come off the back of saying I'm on Tom Cruise's cake list, which sounds like a massive show-off thing to do. And now I'm about to tell you I picked this because I'm in it. So I've really started to sound like a bit of a prat on this episode. Oops. Yeah, I'm in it. That's why I picked it.
Yeah, I didn't actually know you were in it until Luke told me. And obviously you wouldn't recognise you because you're all made up in zombie gear. So how did you come to be involved in the film?
So yeah, for those who are like, must see him in it now. I am third zombie from the front when I chased them into the elevator at the shopping mall and Ving Rhames and Sarah Polley and everyone. So this was, I'd love to say, I was just sitting at home, phone rings, Zack Snyder. He goes, listen, I'm making a remake of Dawn of the Dead, and I just think you'd be great as third zombie from the front. Will you do it? But it was quite a fun thing when I was at MTV and we were making that movie show. I mentioned Screenplay. Sometimes what would happen is you'd go to do a set visit, and what certain film studios did was like, oh, we'll put you in the movie in a small role, and it'll be great content for your show, and you'll talk about the movie, and that'll be that. So I was in Toronto reporting on it, and they were like, do you want to be a zombie in it? And I was like, yes, brilliant. I would absolutely love to be a zombie in it. So I was a zombie in Dawn of the Dead. I was a zombie in George Romero's Land of the Dead. And I played a TV presenter in Juice Bigelow, European Gigolo. Yes, for real.
How long were you in the makeup chair
classic?
For Juice Bigelow, European Gigolo, hours. So it must have been a good 3 hours to get the zombie makeup
Really?
on.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Is it because on our podcast, when we talk about the making of stories, we talk about like how long makeup takes? Is it that agonizing to have that much makeup on and to be just sat in a chair for 3 hours just while they apply layers and layers of makeup?
I quite enjoyed it because it was a one-off. So I was watching this transformation take place as I sat in the chair, and I didn't know what I was going to look like. I imagine if I'd had to go and do it the following day and the surprise of what I'd eventually look like was gone, then it would be quite boring. But at that moment, finding out that I was going to be in a movie, and they were really cool, the producers, they played me some of the footage they'd already shot. So the bit where all the zombies are attacking the bus at the end, it was good. It was good. But yeah, I when you hear some actors, like, I think, was it Ron Perlman for Hellboy? It was like 8 hours. And you're like, 8 hours? Oh my God. So
every day as well for Ron Perlman in that. Cause, So obviously it's a remake, Alex, of the original by Romero. Do you prefer this one or the original?
Oh gosh, there's a loaded question, isn't there? So this is one. This is
taking aside the fact that you're in this one. Which one do you prefer?
I absolutely love the original, but in terms of this is sacrilegious. I like fast zombies. I always have since this movie. I think this was. I mean, 28 Days Later was before this, but I think Danny Boyle famously said they're not zombies because they're not dead. They're infected with a rage virus.
Yeah, but they are the one.
They are. Yeah. But this, the fast zombies in this, and also that title sequence to Johnny Cash when the man comes around is
Brilliant.
One of the, if not the greatest title sequence in cinema history.
Well, that was actually one of our questions, Alex, that do you prefer Romero's classic slow walking zombie or the fast moving ones? I agree. I think they're much scarier when they're faster.
Yeah, I do.
So the thing about slow zombies, I think I understand it's the idea that if there's just one of them, you're all right. You can pretty much escape. But it's the idea that en masse, this thing that individually is almost a bit of a joke because it's shuffling along. But there comes a point where there's just too many of them, and ultimately you are then going to be killed by something that really you should have been able to escape. It's just the number. I love that about zombies. But no, like honest, like that bit where they break, I say that bit where we break into the mall, it's terrifying. The speed and ferocity of them as well.
Yeah. I think, well, with it being Zack Snyder, as well as having obviously horror influences, I think there's quite a lot of action influence in there as well.
Oh yeah, big time.
The part towards the end, we've mentioned this film already, but the part towards the end where they're under the sewers, that reminded me massively of the air duct sequence in Aliens at the end of that, where they're running through the tunnels.
Yes, that's true. I don't think I like that bit very much though, because it's a bit like that's been there all the time and you haven't used it till now.
Yeah.
I think it's better than the original. Yeah, I'm still umming and erring about whether this was the right thing to say, but yes, I'm going to put my neck on the line and say I prefer the 2004 version.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like Zack Snyder, he kind of gets a bit of a bad rap, but I think this was his debut feature as well. It's a hell of a start, and to take the Mona Lisa and redo it, and he's done an amazing job with this film.
Yeah, and James Gunn's probably one of my favorite writers working today, and I love just that opening. It's a little James Gunnism at the start where he's on the phone, the doctor's on the phone, and you can't hear the other side of the conversation. He's like, "Well, I like Gary," and you're like, "So James Gunn."
Yeah, that whole opening sequence I thought was great.
Oh, it's magnificent.
Yeah, unbelievable.
I think like a lot of Zack Snyder films, there's some great visuals. There's a shot where Sarah Polly's driving the car and the camera sort of tracking the car. It looks like a video game. Fantastic.
Yeah, it does.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah, absolutely. That whole opening sequence from the minute, I mean, just the way Vivian gets onto her feet, where she's sort of like, in one fluid moment, she goes from lying down to like poof, onto her feet, the little girl. It's great.
I think there's a cameo from Tom Savini I saw in there as well from the original Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, he plays a cop, doesn't he? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
He's given the instructions: shoot him in the head, burn the bodies. But Ken Forey's in there as the evangelist on TV as well. He's in the original.
That's right. Yeah. See, it's respectful, and I remember.
It is.
I remember reading George Romero. I mean, he didn't love it, like all of it, but he said it was good. He certainly said it was a good film at one point.
Well, that would be good enough for me.
Yeah.
Bit of a sidestep, Alex. But what do you think of Shaun of the Dead?
I was thinking of that.
Yeah, that's the movie where isn't there a line at the end of Shaun of the Dead where he goes, reports of it being a rage virus have been proved incorrect, like taking a little pop at 28 days later. So this is the sad part about being in Dawn of the Dead. I was in Dawn of the Dead, being a zombie in Dawn of the Dead, when I was asked to be a zombie in Shaun of the Dead. So they were doing that.
No way.
They were shooting on the day that I was in Toronto, being in Dawn of the Dead. So I don't know would I have preferred to have been a zombie in Shaun of the Dead, possibly. But yeah, I missed out on that opportunity. But I love Shaun of the Dead. I think it's
incredible.
Just such an amazing film.
So what is your? I mean, I think we know, but what is your favorite scene from Dawn of the Dead?
There's a great bit where third zombie from the front. No, actually, that's on the day that when I was shooting my bit, I was like, I'm going to give my zombie a bit of a limp. So I was running, but I was sort of dragging my legs slightly, And Zack Snyder was like, hey, come over here, man. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a special compliment from the director who likes my weird zombie limp. And he's like, yeah, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah, I've given him a limp. He was like, yeah, don't do that again. I was like, right, got you. So my favorite scene is from the minute Vivian jumps to her feet and attacks Anna's husband, partner, and then her escaping into the street, him chasing her, the drive down, the bit where the truck goes into the petrol station, right up until the end of Johnny Cash and the title sequence. That whole segment is just perfect cinema.
Are these people alive or dead?
Hold him down!
We don't know.
Is that true?
There's a man going around taking names.
And you got your finger in various pies, Alex. You've also got your own movie podcast. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, yes. So I do a podcast called A Trip to the Movies, which we started shortly after lockdown ended because people weren't returning to the cinemas, as I'm sure you guys are aware. I mean, people's viewing habits just changed when studios started putting movies straight onto streaming platforms. And even now, the window between watching a movie at the cinema and it arriving on home video is a lot shorter. And so we just basically wanted to remind people, me and my producer Grant, the cinema is still the best place to watch films. And so each week a guest comes on and takes us on their perfect night out on the cinema. It's a kind of immersive journey. We start in the foyer, who, living or dead, they take with them, what snacks they buy, and then we go into the auditorium. And one of the questions we ask is, it's the one that sort of gets quite a lot of reactions and gets people talking, is what is your unpopular movie opinion? So often people pick a movie that they love that is widely regarded as rubbish, or vice versa, a movie they hate that everyone loves. So what is your unpopular movie opinion?
Oh, lovely. Roles reversed. John, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, well, I've got one which kind of rolls perfectly on the back of the last film we talked about. Because one of mine is that I think Zack Snyder is a director that divides opinion quite heavily. And I think he gets a really bad rap. And I would say I'm actually quite a fan of his. I think his visuals are and Dawn of the Dead's a good example of it. His visuals are incredible. Not just in Dawn of the Dead. I think in his superhero stuff, I think Watchmen is as good an adaptation of a masterpiece graphic novel that I think you're ever going to get. And I think it's largely in the visuals. I think his DC stuff isn't fantastic, but it's not because of the visuals. I think maybe he's a wasted cinematographer, because I think his visuals are as good as anything that's out there for me. And I think he gets a really bad rap by people that say he's ruined DC and he's done this and he's done that. So I would never say that on Twitter, obviously. But yeah.
I mean, wars are being fought as we speak about that on Twitter right now. That is not...
Hashtag release the Snyder Cut.
Yeah. But I guess you're a bit of a fan of him then, Alex, is that right?
Yeah, I am. I'm really interested to see Rebel Moon.
I am as well.
I'm surprised they're allowed to call it Rebel Moon. It's like, this used to be a Star Wars script. No kidding. But yeah, I really do. I think Watchmen, again, I'm a huge fan of Watchmen. I think it's a wonderful adaptation. I mean, it's such a poison chalice adapting a Alan Moore novel, because even if you do the best job, and I think Watchmen is a fantastic adaptation, Alan Moore is still going to go, rubbish.
Yeah.
And you're just,
Yeah.
Tear my name off it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my unpopular movie opinion, I suppose you were very positive, John, and I wish I could be so, but I'm not going to be. And I'll admit that I know I'm wrong, but this is just what I know, and that hands are up. But and I'll also admit
Spit it out, God.
Here it comes.
This is a hell of a build-up.
There's a big lead up. I'm also aware that Stanley Kubrick is one of the greatest directors ever, widely regarded His films are masterpieces. They transcend the medium. They become pieces of art. I love The Shining. I love Full Metal Jacket. I'm a big fan of Eyes Wide Shut. I can't stand 2001. I can't abide it. It takes you through 2 hours of nothingness, and then the last half an hour is just lights. So yes, that's me, and I know that people are just going to say, "Well, you're obviously an idiot and you don't understand it." Hands are up.
That's a brilliant unpopular movie opinion, especially for the line, "The last 20 minutes are just lights." That's incredible.
What does it all mean, though, Alex? Tell me that.
Do you know what? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure someone does. Someone is right now going, I was like literally struggling to find words to describe their fury at you describing the end of 2001. It's just lights. But yeah, that's it. That's a really good one. Yeah, it's a fun question. Dexter Fletcher, where he was on the show, his was quite good. Considering Dexter Fletcher, obviously he directs great movies now. Rocket Man's brilliant.
Yeah.
But he started out as a child actor.
Press Gang, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Press Gang, but even before that, he's Babyface in Bugsy Malone. Pass this to Babyface.
That's right.
Pass this to Babyface.
I think he's in The Long Good Friday as well. He's in the scene.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, of all the unpopular opinions you might imagine Dexter Fletcher would have, he's like he finds child actors ruin movies. he used the example. He said Terminator 2 would be better without John Connor.
I agree with that.
Agreed.
Aliens would be better without Newt.
I'm not sure about that one, but John Connor I definitely go along with.
Really? You think get rid of John Connor from T2?
Not the character, it's the performance. He's so annoying.
What else? Blake Harrison from The Inbetweeners. He said he said his unpopular opinion is that you should not play horror movie trailers in front of any other genre of film. If he goes to the cinema and he's not, because he hates horror, he doesn't
obviously hates horror.
Yeah, he does not want to see a horror trailer. Neil Marshall, the director of The Descent, he said Skyfall is Daniel Craig's worst Bond movie.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Hot take.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to think that Neil would come on the show at one point and talk about some of his films, but I think he's dead wrong there.
Yeah, when you hear him say it, though, I won't spoil it in case someone does want to listen to it. He makes a good case for why it might be Daniel Craig's worst Bond movie. Yeah,
right, I'll check that one out.
Great.
Well, what's yours then, Alex? What would your unpopular opinion be?
I have not got an answer for that. I'm working on one, but I think, well. Do I say it here? I'm gonna borrow what both of you have done, which is prefix this answer with like a lot of explanation. I'm not gonna put myself in a hole. This might be because I think I've finally overwatched part 2, but I'm starting to find myself of the opinion that The Dark Knight Rises is better than The Dark Knight.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, again, prefixing that with the idea that I've just watched The Dark Knight so many times now because I love it. And I think maybe I've just done that thing where I've killed a movie by watching it too much. But every time I watch The Dark Knight Rises, I'm like, well, this is great because it's got closure. We've got the end of the story. It feels like everything's, we've been on this, 3-movie journey, and this is the closure. And I like Return of the Jedi more than I like Empire Strikes Back. So it's a similar thing.
It is.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Well, when you said part 2, I was fearful you were going to say Friday the 13th. So I breathed a sigh of relief when it was The Dark Knight.
Yeah. Or Godfather Part 3 is better than Godfather Part 2.
So you've clearly got a love of movies and music, Alex. I mean, you've built a career on that. What's your favourite, soundtrack or movie score?
That's a really good question because that's one of the questions that I ask on my show as well.
Is it?
On a trip to, the question on a trip to the movies is, what is the best use of music
I heard
in
that
a
one,
movie?
Yeah.
That's a great question, yeah.
And for me, it's either the use of Air on a G-string by Bach in the library scene in Seven, when
Lovely.
Morgan Freeman's researching
Yeah.
Dante's Inferno and everything, and it's like, the security
Wonderful.
guards are like, "You want culture? How's this for culture?" And they play that song, and I'm just like, it just gets me every time. And weirdly, my other one is another Fincher movie, and it's when the Pixies' "Where Is My Mind" comes on
Classic.
at the end of Fight Club.
Great.
What's yours? Let's do this because this is what I ask on the pod.
You've got this one right on us, yeah.
I know mine. I know mine straight away. Danny Elfman's score for Midnight Run. I can't get enough of it. Though the horns and the bluesy breaks, I just can't get enough of that soundtrack. I love it.
In terms of a use of music as a moment in a film, the first one that popped into my head when you asked that question was Marty McFly on his skateboard to The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News.
Yes. Beautiful.
Absolutely masterful bit of music use in a film there. That was, oh God, yeah. Yeah, once when I was a kid, Back to the Future was on the BBC. This Christmas Day. Back to the Future was on the BBC, and Empire Strikes Back was on ITV. And not that this makes it sound, because this is the 80s. I don't. One of these TVs was really small, but my gran did have two TVs, a small one in one room and a bigger one in the other room. And I attempted to run between rooms so I could watch both movies, because this was before video record. We didn't have a video. We couldn't record anything. Didn't go to a video shop. And so it was like I was like, I can't pick between these movies. I have to watch both. So I was just running back and forth trying to watch two movies at once.
Yeah, how can you choose between those? It's impossible,
right?
So to finish it off, then, Alex, what do you have coming up in the pipeline for the future? Any plans?
At the moment, just making more a trip to the movies, which if you're a film fan, I would encourage anyone to give it a listen. Thank you for allowing me to promote it on your show. It's just,
it's a pleasure.
I should ask you guys, do you agree that the cinema is still the best place to watch a film?
Oh,
Without
of
doubt.
course, yeah. I was fearing the same as you, Alex. I thought it was kind of dying a death. I went a couple of months ago, would it be now, went to see Oppenheimer opening weekend, came out the same weekend as Barbie, and the cinema was just buzzing, absolutely rammed, and it was fantastic to see. First time I've seen that for years.
I was exactly the same. I through the nature of the work, I end up having to attend a lot of press screenings. So, which is not as much fun as that opening weekend. I went to see Barbie. And I like you, I can't remember the last time I've been in a cinema where every seat was taken, and that communal experience of everyone just like on this same journey together. It changed the way I watched the film and enjoyed the film. It was perfect.
Yeah.
I went to see The Exorcist. Obviously, the original, it was just a limited release, but the theatre was packed. Every single seat was taken. Wow. And I know it was just because it was one screen and, they're in limited supply, but it was just heartwarming to see this film that shocked the world in 1973, and people are still cramming to go to see it 50 years on. Incredible. Really, really happy with that.
Yeah, and I really hope that this Barbenheimer thing, the success of those movies is going to create, I certainly think there were people who were in those cinemas who certainly will have got a hunger to experience that again. And I really hope it's a turning point and more people are going to be going back to the cinema to watch movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic. Amen. Okay, great. Well, Alex, it's been great to talk to you. We've had loads of fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and we wish you good luck for the podcast and everything else that you've got coming up in the future.
It's been an absolute pleasure chatting films with you guys. Thank you for having me on. This has been absolutely lovely. So cheers.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Alex. That was brilliant.
No problem. Thanks, Alex. Cheers. Big thanks to Alex for coming on the show. Don't forget to check out his podcast, A Trip to the Movies with Alex Zane. Great show. As for All the Right Movies, our latest podcast on classic and hit films is on A Nightmare on Elm Street. That came out last week. And next week, we're talking about Daniel Craig's first 007 outing, Casino Royale. So tune in for that next week. It's going to be a good one, John.
Huge one, Casino Royale. Yeah, Daniel Craig's first. So should be great.
One of the best. If you like the podcast, you can sign up to be an All the Right Movies Patreon supporter. You can get access to all of the podcasts that we've created exclusively for Patreon and our classic podcast archive, which is stuffed full with around 130 episodes on classic and hit films not available anywhere else.
Oof.
Oh,
Massive.
yeah. An opportunity not to be missed.
Absolutely.
There are other benefits available as well, so go to patreon.com/all the right movies to support us and get access to hundreds of hours of great content. And our classic podcast archive is also available on Apple Podcasts, so subscribe to that to get your hands on that now. It would also be great if you could give us a positive rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You know, we love 5 stars here, John.
Yeah, only positive ones, please. Keep your negativity to yourself.
Yeah, if you don't mind. In the meantime, we're everywhere on social media. On Twitter, we are at ATRightMovies. Instagram and Threads, we are at all_the_right_movies. We have our Facebook group as well, full of lively discussions and wonderful people. Follow us on TikTok. We are at All the Right Movies. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos. They go up all the time. They include the whole ATRM gang and are fantastic. And finally, our website with loads of incredible features is alltherightmovies.com. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Come back next week for Casino Royale. We'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot, everybody. See you then.
Bye.